So with that, I'd like to introduce Isaac Hauser, who's the planner, who's been working on this project for quite a while sometime. This meeting is kind of in lieu of a meeting that had to be canceled, unfortunately, in March, but there's been a lot of work going on in the background. So feel free to take it away, Isaac.
Thank you, Britt and Sean, for your kind words. I hope everybody is able to hear me okay. I want to quickly say thank you all for participating in this meeting. Engagement is a crucial part of this process. So thank you, everybody. A special thank you as well to the Argyle BIA, the Argyle Community Association, Councillor Lewis, and all planning staff that are present here tonight to help us in this process. Just one more question. If you have a question or issue, please use the chat. And if you want it to be seen by not just the panelists, but by all other attendees, please click on the arrow down and then click on all panelists and attendees. Thank you. I wanted to start with an aerial picture of the Argyle and the Pottersburg area. This picture is made in the end of the 1950s. In the middle of your screen to the top left, you can see the Dundas corridor with the Canadian National Railway line on the left bottom of your screen and the Hill Street district on the bottom right of your screen. Present day Kiwanis Park is also visual with the Pottersburg Creek running through it. And as you can see, the urban sprawl and the expansion towards the east of the City of London was already fully underway in the 1950s, but it wasn't until the amalgamation in 1961 that all of this area, including Pottersburg and Argyle, became part of the City of London. Of course, many things have changed since then, new developments, new buildings, but what hasn't changed is that the Dundas Street corridor is still one of the main arteries that runs through Argyle. So what is the purpose of this meeting tonight? First of all, and most importantly, this is an update on the Argyle Community Regeneration Study. We will give also an explanation of the community improvements and what community improvement plans are. Then we will quickly summarize the community profile, both for the Argyle Planning District as well as the Argyle BIA area. As said before, because engagement is such an important piece of this, I will highlight some of the strengths and weaknesses as perceived by stakeholders. This includes residents, business owners, but also visitors and other stakeholders. Finally, we're going to take a quick look at the infrastructure renewal and public investment that is ongoing in the Argyle area. And finally, we'll end with some key findings and next steps. Halfway through the presentation and at the end is a little break to allow for some questions. There are many different tools and approaches that a city can use to shape our communities. Some of these are parts of long-range planning, such as official plans and secondary plans. Other tools that we can use to urban regenerate, which means supporting sensitive growth and change in urban areas to make sure that they are sustainable and prosperous. Examples of this are downtown regeneration studies, culture plans, heritage plans, and also community improvement plans, which we call CIPs. So a CIP is one of the tools that we've looked at in this study. But as you can see, there are many other planning tools, programs, and existing services that the City of London provides that can address specific issues, opportunities, and context. Of course, every area is different and has its own unique challenges to address. So every policy, plan, or tool will be tailored towards the specific needs of a community. So the Provincial Planning Act defines community improvement as the planning or replanning, design or redesign, re-subdivision, clearance, development or redevelopment, construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and improvement of a community improvement project area, or CIP. In other words, if a municipal council is of the opinion that within a certain area, community improvement is desirable for social, environmental, or economic development reasons, the City Council can designate a community improvement plan project area. Section 28 of the Planning Act is a tool that allows municipalities to take actions to support improvements and redevelopment within a specifically defined CIP project area. CIPs can help in a number of ways. For example, to address reuse and restoration of lands, building, and infrastructure. A CIP can address growth management challenges and plan for rehabilitation and land use changes. Very important is that CIPs are action plans that focus and coordinate efforts to make improvements to rehabilitation and redevelopment in an established area. A CIP is a long-term strategy, so it's not a quick fix. And a CIP is also not static, but it is a program that requires monitoring, review, and adjustment. In addition to some of the examples that I earlier mentioned, here you see an overview of different actions that a CIP provides. It can identify changes needed to planning policies, zoning, and practices. It identifies and focuses needs, community goals, objectives, and priorities. It directs funds for improvement to infrastructure and public space. It can stimulate private investment, grants, and/or loans for specific eligible costs. It identifies stakeholders, leaders, and potential collaborations and partnerships within a community. It helps coordinate municipal expenditures and planning and development activity. And finally, it can acquire, rehabilitate, repair, and/or dispose of land. It is important to understand that Council has the final say in the improvement and implementation of CIPs. This also is true for the financial incentives. Council can provide those, but is not obligated to, and is always in full control of its implementation and end date. Another way to think of a CIP is with a carrot and stick method. CIP programs and incentives, the carrot, complement a more traditional regulatory planning tools such as the official plan and zoning bylaws, which are more firm rules, or stick. If we take a look at the timeline of the regeneration study for Argyle, in October 2019, the Argyle Business Improvement Area did a request for a comprehensive regeneration study of the Argyle BAA and surrounding areas. The civic administration added this study to the city planning work plan for 2020. So as a result, we have conducted the Argyle Community Regeneration Study during 2020. And on August 10th, 2020, an update of the report was provided to the Planning and Environment Committee. Councillors gave some direction and suggestions about the progress of the report. Of course, today, November 5th, 2020, we're participating in the virtual community information meeting. And finally, the Argyle Regeneration Study report and recommendations will be brought forward to the Planning and Environment Committee either in the last quarter of 2020 or the first quarter of 2021. A little bit more about the project's background. As I said before, the Argyle Business Improvement Area, the Argyle BAA, requested that the city created a community improvement plan for the Argyle area. CIPs are one of the many tools that allow municipalities to guide positive growth and change in an area. But before we can implement a community improvement plan, we have to see if some of the criteria that are set out in the Provincial Planning Act and the London Plan are met. So that is what this study is all about. We are working to figure out the best approach and tools to achieve the community goals for the area. A really important piece of this is community engagement, because it is necessary for us to hear from stakeholders in the area, because they are the experts, what is really going on. We've had numerous discussions and meetings with organizations and stakeholders. City Planning has also created a city project webpage on getinvolved.london.argyle. Here, project updates are provided. You can fill in some questions, and there is also a short survey. I've also hosted 2 planning office hours at the East London Library on Dundas Street. This is a little bit more informal way to learn about the project and to talk to city planners. I've also been invited at the Argyle Community Association meeting. This was back in March at the Argyle Family Center. And I've also participated in an Argyle BAA meeting to give an update on the progress. And then finally, today we are doing a virtual community information meeting. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has had some challenges on the community engagement, and unfortunately, we had to cancel an in-person regular community information meeting that was scheduled for March 26. Here you see some of the key questions that are brought forward in the report. What are the issues and priorities in the Argyle area, and how do they contribute to regeneration? Secondly, what does regeneration look like in Argyle? And finally, what are the best ways to achieve local regeneration, and what do we need to do to set things up for success? I want to bring your attention to the map on the left. Here you see the Argyle Planning District in light gray, generally bounded by Highbury, Oxford, Clark Road, and some of the Canadian Pacific and Canadian National Railway lines, and the Veterans Memorial Parkway on the east side. In red is the boundaries of the Argyle BAA outlined. And as you can see, part of the Argyle BAA on the left side, close to Highbury, is not part of the Argyle Planning District. Because we wanted to fully incorporate the Argyle BAA area and to allow for better comparison with trade reports and the 2016 census, we have decided to expand the study area a little bit to the west to include the full BAA area and Hill Street district into the planning study area, which is outlined with the dark black line. I've had some emails and calls asking if this means that the Argyle Planning District will be expanded to the west. That is not the case at all. This is a study that stands on itself and has no bearing on the boundaries of the Argyle Planning District, which stay as they are. Finally, I should also say that the study boundaries might change in a later version or update of this report, and any areas or properties that you see in this map may or may not be included in the final boundaries for plans or programs. All right, we're almost halfway through the presentation. I'm wondering if there are any questions so far. I don't see any, but I will give a little bit of time if there's any uncertainty or issues.
If there's anyone that feels more comfortable speaking to your question as opposed to typing it in the chat, if you can just make a little note in the chat and I can unmute anyone.
And as Britt has said before, this presentation will also be recorded and uploaded on getinvolved.london.ca in a couple of days. So if for some reason you weren't able to attend due to time constraints, or you know somebody that would like to learn more about this project, please go to getinvolved.london.ca or reach out to me. You can see my email address as well. I don't see any questions, so I'll keep going, but I'll keep my eye on the chat. And at the end of the presentation, there's more room for questions.
So we did have one question, Isaac. I'm not sure if we can, answer this, but we can certainly take it back. And the question was, will the new community center be by membership only? And I don't have the answer to that question right now, but we can post the answer to any questions. Oh, looks like Councillor Lewis might have an answer. You might have to lean in closer to the microphone again. Sorry.
It's going to be a little bit of a hybrid model. Not going to be run by the YMCA. It will be city run. So you'll be able to kind of pick and choose what programs you want to be in. There will be different seniors programs, youth programs. So hopefully that gives you a sense. We'll have a little more detail coming out on that. I believe the December 3rd meeting of Community and Protective Services, we're going to get an update from our Parks and Rec staff on that. But it won't be a situation where you have to buy a membership to get access to everything. You're going to be able to pick and choose what you want to get access to.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And I'll just kind of paraphrase that in the chat in case anybody wasn't able to hear, but I thought it was fairly clear, but I'll write that as well. So we have the record. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis, for that answer. I will keep going, and if more questions come up, we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Here you see an overview of the study area. Once again, the study area for the community regeneration study is outlined in black, and the Argyle Planning District is outlined in yellow. The Argyle Business Improvement Area runs along the Dundas corridor from Highbury Avenue to Wavell Street, and also includes the Argyle Mall. And this can really be seen as one of the main sub-areas within Argyle. Another sub-area are the Argyle area neighborhoods, located both on the north and south of the BIA area. Further, visualized in green, we can see some of the city parks and open spaces. Of course, the biggest city park in Argyle is Kiwanis Park, but there are also many other neighborhoods parks, such as the East Lions Park, Nelson and Admiral Park, Bonaventure Meadows, Forest View, and Mildred Barrens. And finally, a little bit of a unique area is located on the top left corner, which are the London Psychiatric Hospital lands. Of course, this area has a long heritage and history as one of the main psychiatric and mental institutions in Canada. In 2014, it closed its doors for its last patients. And because it's such a unique and partly vacant area, it is really suitable for more development and intensification. It is a 72-hectare area that is bought by Old Oak Properties with the intention to develop townhouses, mid-rise apartments, senior living, student residences, and commercial spaces. Here you see the generalized zoning in Argyle. Once again, in black, the outlines of the study area. As you can see, the the Argyle Business Improvement Area is mostly zoned for commercial uses, with a little bit of institutional uses in blue as well. Other institutional uses are, besides the London Psychiatric Hospital lands, are schools, community facilities such as the community center and Argyle Arena, and also a large area of the Forest View Cemetery. In yellow, you see the residential zoning, the residential neighborhoods. And interestingly, Argyle is a very diverse area that also has some industrial zoning located along the railway corridors on the north and south of the planning district and close to Veterans Memorial Parkway. Finally, in green, you see the open space zoning, such as Kiwanis Park. If we take a look at the circle diagram of the percentages of the general zoning in Argyle, you see that the majority is zoned for residential uses, 54%, followed by industrial with 14%, institutional with 13%, commercial with 12%, and 7% is zoned as open space. Traditionally, planners focus on land uses that are permitted in a certain area. We call this land use designation. So for example, industrial or residential zoning. The new official plan of the City of London, called the London Plan, released in 2016, takes a little bit of a different approach, and it establishes policies that regulate the development and uses that are permitted. It also looks at the allowed intensity, and it has form requirements in each of these place types. So the difference is that it is not just based on what is permitted, but it also envisions more what an area should look like. This connects also with the goals of the London Plan to accommodate infill and intensification within our existing communities. This is to prevent urban sprawl, which is not sustainable both financially and environmentally. As you can see, the majority of the place types in Argyle are neighborhoods. The top left corner, the London Psychiatric Hospital lands, are the transit village place type, which is after downtown, envisioned for the highest and broadest range of uses. The downtown and the transit villages are connected with each other with the rapid transit corridor in dark blue, which will run along Dundas Street, west of Highbury, north along Highbury, and on Oxford Street. And these rapid transit corridors also allow for a wide range of uses and moderate intensity in a linear configuration. This is very similar to the urban corridor in light blue along Dundas Street. The only difference is that here is no rapid transit corridor, so no rapid bus system. And compared to the rapid transit corridor, the intensity is slightly lower in the urban corridor. As you can see, the Argyle Mall is zoned as a shopping area, which also allows for a broad range of commercial, office, and residential uses at a moderate intensity, and it will act as a community hub. For the rest, in green, you see the green space place type. Light gray is industrial place types, located mostly the north, south, and along the Veterans Memorial Parkway. And finally, in dark purple are commercial place types. Here you see the percentages of place types in the Argyle area. 55% is the neighborhood place type, followed by light industrial with 11%. Then the green space place type with 9.5%. Road allowance with 8%. The urban corridor, which is basically Dundas Street, 6%. The transit village with 4%. Shopping area with 2%, and then some other place types, such as a railway corridor, heavy industrial, and the rapid transit corridor. If we look at the population density in an area, which basically means the amount of people per hectare, we see that there is a wide range of densities in Argyle. The least dense areas, visualized in yellow, are usually the commercial or industrial areas, where of course less people live. Along Dundas Street are medium population densities in orange, and the most dense areas are red. This is especially in the neighborhood in the east, along Trafalgar Heights and Nelson Park, and a little pocket on the north end of the planning district, between 2nd Street and 1st Street along the Oxford Street, where there are some apartment buildings and student housing. This is the highest density overall, with 74 people per hectare. Approximately 28,200 people live in the Argyle district in 11,500 households. This population number, has remained largely stable over time. Between 2006 and 2016, the population in Argyle actually decreased a little bit, but in the last couple of years, in conjunction with the City of London itself, the population has been growing. The Argyle Planning District is a very large district, actually the second largest urban district after the Westminster area, and is made up of several neighborhoods, such as Hill Street District, Pottersburg, Clark Drive, Nelson Park, Bonaventure Meadows, and Trafalgar Heights. It is dominated by many arteries, such as the commercial corridor along Dundas Street, which has a lot of vehicle movements. In total, 28,500 vehicles move along Dundas Street every day. On Highbury Street, and these numbers are even higher, with 36,000 people on Highbury Ave. Clark Road has 27,500 vehicles a day. Veterans Memorial Parkway, 27,000, and Trafalgar Street, roughly 22,000 vehicles a day. If we look at the modes of transport, and I have to say this is based on data before the start of the pandemic. Of course, many people have moved to working from home, but before the pandemic, 77% of people commuted to work by car, which is a little bit higher than the city average of 74%. 9% of people take transit to work, compared to 10% citywide. And finally, active transport users, so walking and cycling, is 5%, compared to a city average of 8%. There are also many amenities and community places in Argyle. There are 11 schools. Fire station number 10 is located on Trafalgar Street. You have the emergency medical services station number 5 on Dundas. Of course, the East London Library, the East Lions Community Centre that is under construction, many other community services and agencies, such as the London Middlesex Housing Corporation and the emergency shelter, ANOVA. Here you see an overview of the age structure for Argyle compared to the city. Argyle is visualized in blue and the City of London in orange. As you can see, there's a relative similar age structure compared to the city, especially ages under 14, 15 to 29, 30 to 44. Somewhat different is the age group 45 to 64, which is more common in Argyle than in the city. And the opposite is true for people aged 65 or older, which are less common in Argyle compared to the city. The median household income in Argyle is $60,000 and $60,835. So this is the annual household income. This is 9% lower than a city average of $66,821. If we look at the educational attainment, so that means the highest level of education that an individual has completed, we see that the amount of people who have no high school or apprenticeship diploma or college diploma are all higher in Argyle compared to the city. On the other hand, the percentage of university attendees, both below bachelor and master, is lower in Argyle compared to the city. If we take a look at the housing stock in Argyle, we can see that about 55% of housing in Argyle are single detached dwellings. This is more common than in the City of London with 49%. Apartments with 5 or more stories are quite rare in Argyle, only 5% compared to a citywide average of 21%. And other types of dwellings, which include townhouses, semis, row housing, and apartments less than 5 stories, are more common in Argyle compared to the city. If we look at home tenure, 65% of residents are homeowners. So that means, of course, that the rest is renting. And this is a little bit higher in Argyle compared to the city, where 60% of the people are homeowners. And finally, if we take a look at the age of the housing stock, 70% of dwellings in Argyle were built before 1980, with an additional 25% built between 1980 and 2000. That means that roughly 5% of dwellings were built after the year 2000. And this 5% in Argyle compares to 20.5% citywide. So far, we have looked at the Argyle planning area, but now it's time to zoom in to the Argyle BIA. The Argyle BIA boundaries run along the Dundas corridor, all the way from Highbury Avenue to Wavell Street, and also include the Argyle Mall. The Argyle BIA was founded in 2011 and designated by the Municipal Council in 2012. And the BIA works to promote and beautify the area, support businesses within its boundaries, and foster a sense of community for all. Some of their programs include the Clean Street Initiative, beautification. You've probably seen the teal crosswalks, banners, pole wraps, and the holiday decorations. Other initiatives are the sweeping program for sidewalks, graffiti cleanup, and collaboration with London Cares and the Coordinated Informed Response Initiative to mitigate and address some of the homelessness issues. Because the majority of the Dundas Street corridor is zoned for commercial uses, Dundas Street and the Argyle BIA are dominated by commercial zoning. 14% is zoned for institutional uses, and this is mostly due to the London Psychiatric Hospital lands. 3% is zoned as open space and 1% for residential zoning. If we take a look at the urban place types, the majority, 61%, is zoned as urban corridor, has the urban corridor place type. 12% is a shopping area. This is mainly the Argyle Mall. 11.6% is road allowance, 6.9% is green space, 6.8% is the rapid transit corridor, and less than 1% is the railway corridor running north of Dundas Street. About 200 members are part of the Argyle BIA, and they are all located within the BIA boundaries. And of course, there is a vast array of business types within the Argyle BIA area. Major uses are retail, services, and dining, but other local shopping needs and day-to-day needs such as health, athletics and recreation, community service, and financial services can be met in Argyle as well, which means that it's a really convenient one-stop shop. Now it's time to look at the building activity in Argyle. This is all the building permits in the Argyle study area, so all of Argyle, between the 1st of January 2015 and the 31st of September 2020. Of course, because only 3/4 are so far in 2020, these numbers will always be a little bit lower. And the COVID-19 pandemic has also a potential impact on the 2020 numbers. In total, in this time frame, 536 permits with a total value of 37.65 million have been obtained in the Argyle area. The far majority of these are residential permits, which you can see that especially between 2015 and 2019 has been somewhat of a decrease, with 2019 actually with the lowest residential permit numbers. Commercial permits show a little bit more fluctuation. 2019 was here actually a record year, and the amount of institutional and industrial permits are significantly lower. If we compare the total number of permits, 536, to the citywide amount of permits, 22,400, we can calculate that citywide 1.26 permits per hectare were provided, compared to only 0.43 permits per hectare in Argyle. This means that building activity was roughly 3 times higher than in Argyle in all of the City of London. Now, if we look at the building permits obtained in just the Argyle BAA area, we see that there are 68 permits with a total value of $7.17 million. This is in the same time frame from January 2015 to September 2020. Because almost all of the BAA is zoned for commercial uses, these permits are mostly commercial permits, which shows a strong fluctuation, but 2019 was actually the record year. And comparing to the rest of the city, as I said before, in all of London, 1.26 permits per hectare were obtained. And in the Argyle BAA area, this is 0.79 permits per hectare, which means that within Argyle, relatively more permits were obtained within the Argyle BAA area compared to the rest of Argyle, but that both the Argyle BAA and the Argyle planning area are lacking building activity compared to all of the city. Of course, this is also in large part to the mature, a little bit older nature of the Argyle area. As I said before, engagement is a really important piece of this study. And what we've heard from stakeholders, both good and bad, is really important to inform us what are some of the regeneration goals that we need to work on. Things that people like is that Argyle is a mature and diverse neighborhood with a lot of different land uses, a lot of employment opportunities, and a lot of flexibility in housing. There's also a strong sense of community. People are very proud to live in East London and Argyle specifically. The variety of businesses are seen as very convenient. People really enjoy being able to meet most of their shopping needs within the area they live. Another asset of Argyle are the great parks, especially Kiwanis Park, but also some of the neighborhood parks I mentioned before. And finally, Argyle is conveniently located close to employment areas and through the Veterans Memorial Parkway has great access to the airport and the Highway 401. Some of the weaknesses are that Argyle has some characteristics of economical and social issues. As we have seen before, the educational attainment, household income are lower in Argyle compared to the city, and Argyle has a bit of an older housing stock and less building development as well. Some of the social issues that are quite concerning are crime, petty crimes such as trespassing and but also more serious things such as arson, burglaries. Of course, there's a lot of substance abuse, mental health issues, drug paraphernalia such as needles that are found, and unfortunately an increasing population of people experiencing homelessness. Another weakness that we've heard from stakeholders is the unpleasant public realm. The public realm are all streets, lanes, sidewalks, and open spaces. And some of the things that people don't like are the narrow or sometimes even non-existing sidewalks, the lack of streetlights, which contribute to an overall feeling of unsafety, and a lack of pedestrian crossings and safe routes for cyclists and pedestrians. There's a strong need to create a better public space that is clean, safe, and functional. Another weakness is the need or the lack of affordable housing in the area. Of course, there is some rent geared to income housing provided by the London Middlesex Housing Corporation along Hill Street, which is more for seniors, and along Marconi Boulevard, which is for families. But this is nowhere near enough, especially as we see increasing residential and commercial rents, extremely low vacancy rates, and ever increasing average housing prices in London and Argyle. And finally, there is also frustration with the current state of roads and congestion, which is contributed by the high amounts of traffic and trucks that come through the area. Residents and businesses see some opportunities for infill development and redevelopment to attract more business, more residents, and more talent into the area. There's a desire for clear neighborhood identity. People want to develop Dundas Corridor more as a pedestrian main street and as a focal point for community events and programs. People are really proud, for example, of the Santa Claus parade in Argyle, because this is one of the moments that people from outside the area come to Argyle instead of the other way around, that residents have to go outside of the area to participate in events or recreation. Another opportunity is a better connection with City Hall and the existing programs, and also to create a better understanding of what programs are already available and provided by the City of London. You can think of examples such as Adopted Park, neighborhood action plans, neighborhood safety audits, the neighborhood decision-making program, public art programs, and the 3&Me Fund. And finally, stakeholders have also identified an opportunity for the private sector to provide a broader range of uses. Some of the missing uses that we've heard about are a lack of fresh food in the area, a lack of recreation and cinema, and a lack of laundromats. There are some laundromats in Argyle, but people need to travel with public transit with their laundry, which is of course a bit of a nuisance. Some of the threats, there's a feeling that Argyle is overlooked. And this has probably been exacerbated by the year or decade-long process of the community center. There's an aging population and very low vacancy rates, which means that it is difficult for seniors to age in place. And unfortunately, they are sometimes forced outside of the community for senior residences, which means that they lack their social safety net and need to take public transit or drive to visit their friends or, for example, places of worship. The development on the psychiatric hospital lands are also seen as a threat to existing businesses. Another threat are congestion and inefficient public transit. A relatively new threat, of course, is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on small businesses. Especially in the spring and early summer, the amount of traffic and people in the area was significantly lower, probably around 30% of regular amounts. And this has rebounded somewhat in the late summer and fall. But of course, as we're moving through the second wave and going into the winter. The impact on businesses is still very uncertain and quite severe. So we're not out of the woods yet at all. And finally, another threat is the natural environment that is partly due to the industrial uses in the area, sometimes polluted, such as the Pottersburg Creek. And there are some areas that require remediation because the soil is contaminated. So what have we heard about the Dundas Street corridor? The Argyle BAA does a yearly survey under their businesses. Strengths as perceived by business owners are the variety of businesses, the good community, which means the large amount of people that live in the area, the loyal clientele, and the accessible and good amount of traffic, especially on the Dundas corridor. Weaknesses are some of the social issues. Crime is quite common, and this includes burglaries, vehicle theft, arsons, and robberies. There's a feeling that the police could be more active and that enforcement, both from the police as well as from bylaw officers, should be increased. There's a lack of city involvement and uncertainty about the programs. Another weakness are the rundown facades and unpleasant public realm along Dundas Street corridor. For example, the limited amount of pedestrian crossings, lack of street trees, there are barely any places to sit. Public transit amenities such as bus shelters are lacking. There are many hydro poles which limit the amount of space on the sidewalks, and some local roads have no curbs. And finally, the roads are sometimes in poor condition, which is another weakness as perceived by business owners. I quickly want to highlight some of the ongoing infrastructure renewal and public investment in the area. This is by no means a complete list. This is just a highlight of more recent development. There's been significant infrastructure renewal on Churchill Avenue, Wavell Street, Winnipeg Boulevard, Jana Crescent, and Higg Street and Spruce Street. This includes reconstructing sanitary and storm sewers, installation of roadway, and overall streetscape improvements. Of course, the East Lions Community Center, although delayed many times, is nearing its completion. And this also includes the park master plan that will incorporate the East Lions Community Center within the existing park. The 2020 annual sidewalk program. This is a program that responds to residents' needs and requests for sidewalks to be installed in neighborhoods that are lacking those amenities. In 2020, work has been done on Juliette Street and Wavell Street at Merlin Crescent. And for 2021, Buchan Road is scheduled to be upgraded. There are some major park projects underway as well, such as in Kiwanis Park, where an information kiosk and a granular loop have been added. And together with the Upper River Thames Conservation Authority, there is significant work on the way to protect native species. Another park located on Trafalgar Street is the Vimy Ridge Park, which of course commemorates the First World War battle. I'll show you a picture in a minute. This park is actually nearing its completion and trees have been planted this week. And finally, Mildred Barron Park has added some swing sets and a walkway from the parking area to the park. Some upcoming public investment and infrastructure renewal is the Pottersburg Creek trunk sewer. The first phase will start in the medium term, so between 2 and 5 years from now, as the project is currently in its environmental assessment. And finally, the East London link of the bus rapid transit system, scheduled to start construction between 2022 and 2024, which will revitalize 6 kilometers of roads between the downtown and Fanshawe College, which will also better connect the McCormick lands and London Psychiatric Hospital lands with downtown London. On the left side, you see the Vimy Ridge Park. This picture was actually taken this week. The flagpoles in the background have just been added, as well as the monuments. And on the right side, you see the new swing set, Mildred Barons Park. That brings me to the key findings and considerations so far of the Argyle Community Regeneration Study. Based on the analysis of stakeholder feedback, the existing policy framework, the available tools, and rates of private and public investment, Argyle has potential for appropriate infill, intensification, and redevelopment. Public space and amenities along Dundas Street could be enhanced. There's a need for coordination of social services, which would be beneficial to improve safety. A plan and long-term vision for the Dundas Street corridor would be beneficial. The Argyle BAA has been working within their annual budget to implement projects. However, additional programs would increase the rate of regeneration. And finally, there are opportunities for enhancing the cultural and natural heritage resources. So what are the next steps? Either in the last quarter of 2020 or the first quarter of 2021, we will bring forward a recommendation report to the Planning and Environment Committee for consideration, and opportunities to provide feedback are still ongoing. You can do this on the getinvolved.london.ca/Argyle website. I want to thank you all for your participation, and I was wondering if there are any questions on the study.
Yes, thank you, Isaac. That was great and a lot of good information. I'll summarize some of the questions that the counselor's been able to answer in the chat, and then some other ones that have gone in here. So one question that came directly to the panelist was about some of the heritage properties on the psychiatric hospital lands. And so I will note that that property is designated heritage. So any demolitions, any development that goes onto that property would require a heritage review. And we can provide some more information on this project website to address that that particular question, to give you more specific information on the different buildings, including the church. There was a lot of interest in the comments on the community center. And Councillor Lewis has very nicely offered to answer any specific questions about that. If you wanted to reach out to him at slewis@london.ca, he can connect you with the appropriate people. We'll also provide a bit of a summary on our project webpage and direct you to any relevant information. One of the questions being the different services that would be offered at the community center. So there, it will be introducing some small services, potentially like offering bus tickets, garbage bag tags, and there will be free Wi-Fi. There was also some concerns about how the pandemic is affecting access to social services, and we'll certainly pass that information along to our community services partners, but we can also provide some additional information on this project website as well. Trying to see if there was anything else. Are there any new questions that anyone wanted to add at this point? On the Argyle study. Nope, it's not looking like there's any new questions. I will say, I'll say thank you to our planner that's kind of behind the scenes, Laurel Davies-Snyder, who's been monitoring the chat and offering kind of compiling questions and offering some direction. So one thing that I will note, that this isn't the last time that you'll be able to ask questions. Feel free to reach out to Isaac directly. His email address is on the slide there. It's IDECEUST@london .ca for, I believe we have one person on telephone. And then getinvolved.london.ca/Argyle is the project webpage. We will provide a summary of all of this. Oh, I do see one more question. When is development scheduled for the London City Chrysler property? And I do not have an answer to that right now, but we can provide, we can follow up and post any information we have on that. I'm not sure if that's related to a city project or whether that would be a private development.
Yeah, I have to look into that a little bit further, but I'll reach out to you, Deborah, so by email to give you an answer to that question.
Yes, that's true. So we do have, I believe, people that registered with their email addresses. We would have, we would be able to contact you back directly as well when we compile some of this, some of the answers to these questions. All right. So, so the Chrysler building is the Ontario Works building. So we'll follow up with some additional information on that particular project directly to you and also post it on the project website. All right, Councillor Lewis. Oh. Might have to go a little closer to the microphone. It's just a bit choppy.
Okay, we'll try this. If everybody can hear me, that's great. I just want to share a couple other items that we've been working on upcoming. I think we're going to get a plan to do this. We're working on it's schedule. So that's happening. That.
All right. I think you might have to, I think I caught that you'll post that in the chat, but hopefully we'll be able to summarize some of those comments. Again, just to kind of reiterate, next steps, Isaac, if you want to say kind of where we're going and kind of summarize your project.
Yes, absolutely. So we're still open for feedback at the getinvolved.london.ca Argyle website, and we're in the closing and finalizing stages of the study. So we'll bring forward a recommendation to the Planning and Environment Committee either in the last quarter of 2020 or the first quarter of 2021 to give a recommendation on the current goals and vision for the area and the regeneration in Argyle. And once again, I want to thank everybody for their participation. Without you, this project wouldn't be possible. You are the experts of the area. So thank you for participating. Please feel free to email me. And you can also come to the office to meet with me face-to-face, of course, while keeping all the health precautions in act. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to see if there are any additional questions, but oh, there is one, I think. Oh, that is Councillor Lewis.
Yep. So I'll just say thank you, Isaac, for all your work on this. It's a great presentation. For those that don't know, Isaac's one of the newer members of our team, and he's been putting in a lot of great hard work for this project along with others. Thank you, Councillor Lewis, for taking the time to join us as well. And thank you to Laurel, who's kind of behind the scenes, keeping us in check. And thanks to everyone who's participated in this meeting. I don't think we had too many technical difficulties, but we thank you for kind of working through this with us. And have a great rest of your evening, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.